All right, well, a trade has already happened, and Deebo Samuel has left the 49ers, and for a fifth-round pick, the Washington Commanders have acquired him. Now, he's only got 1 year left on his deal that's going to pay him, I think, a little over $17 million this year. But the Commanders have large cap space, so, there's potential there. They could rework the deal or extend the deal before the season even begins. But you've got really going to the Commanders. Does this lift Jaden Daniels into the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the NFC? And I think it does, because you've already seen what he did last year. And then you've got Terry McLaurin outside. You've got Brian Robinson coming out of the backfield, who's a great dual threat running back. And then you've got maybe the NFL's number 1 playmaker in Deebo Samuel. And you got one of the top dual threat quarterbacks in Jaden Daniels. Now, I think that's going to do wonders for the Commanders. Obviously, I think it's going to hurt the 49ers. And I think the big winner in all of this is the Los Angeles Rams, who play the 49ers twice a year and now no longer have to worry about defending Deebo Samuel. So now let's move on to the free agency period, which is going to start very shortly. And all eyes over the past, I'd say, couple of weeks, for the Bears anyway, it seems, were on would they go after Trey Smith, the Kansas City Chiefs all-pro offensive guard. And then recently, the Chiefs just locked him up on a 1-year franchise tag. So now you look around the league, and what other free agent interior offensive linemen are out there? Well, Will Freeze with the Colts has developed into a top, not only run blocker, but pass blocker as well. But he had his season cut short last year due to a wicked tibia injury, which now the Bears could potentially use to keep the cost down. You've also got Mekhi Becton, who had his career revived. If you remember, he started out as a number 1 offensive draft pick, offensive tackle by the Jets, had his career revived last year with an amazing switch to right guard, and then paved the way for one of the greatest runs in NFL history with paving the way for Saquon Barkley to get 2,000 yards. And then what a great season Mekhi Becton had. So he's a free agent. So potentially there's, obviously the biggest deal for the Chicago Bears seems to be both their offensive and defensive lines. But with the offensive-minded Ben Johnson now at head coach and playmaker, or play caller, play designer, and you've invested a lot in your future in Caleb Williams as a number 1 draft pick last year, quarterback, it would make sense for the Bears to solidify that interior part of the offensive line. And then we move on to the draft. And let's talk running backs. First, there seems to be 2 names at the top. Ashton Jeanty, the running back out of Boise State, who was up for a Heisman this year. And then you've got Amarian Hampton, running back out of UNC, who's bigger, more of a Nick Chubb type running back, 6'1", around 220 pounds. Ashton Jeanty, though, at 5'8", 210, not as big, but great contact balance. And I played with a guy for a few years in Detroit, about the same stature as Jeanty, 5'8", maybe a couple hundred pounds, a guy named Barry Sanders, and didn't have too much difficulty, despite not being one of the bigger backs in the NFL, of making his mark. So I think Ashton Jeanty will be, of the 2, I think he'll be the first running back taken. And we'll see what happens, though. That's why the draft is what it is. Okay, so now that the offseason has officially begun, teams have started trading for players. Free agency has actually begun. And I think right now the team that has made the biggest impact so far has been clearly the Chicago Bears. First thing they did was they start out and got the head coach they were looking to get in Ben Johnson. Then they go acquire 3 interior offensive linemen, starting with Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson. Thuney with the Chiefs, Jackson with the Rams, who was previously coached by when Ben Johnson was with the Lions. Jonah Jackson was there as well. And then they added Drew Dahlman, the Falcons center. So right away, they added not 3 backups, but 3 legit Pro Bowl caliber starters. And then they shift to the defense and acquire Grady Jarrett, a defensive tackle from the Falcons, and get it pronounces his name correctly here, Deo Odeyingbo, the defensive edge rusher from the Colts. So right away, before anything happens, on paper at least, they've added 5 quality starters to a team that already has quite a crew of talented skill players. And then we got to shift to the Steelers because they also made a significant move in reverse order of what you would think. So not having a quarterback really dedicated to coming back, they went out and got DK Metcalf to pair up with George Pickens and then hopefully make the situation smooth for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who would be at 41 years old, really a short-term solution for what they need quarterback-wise, but at least potentially he could shift from the dual role he played with the Jets, which was starting quarterback and team president, to just quarterback with the Steelers. And I think managing that offense and now the newly acquired DK Metcalf and trying to be a leader in that crew, I think would be his biggest asset. And then the Rams move on to who were already, they finished the year very strong, mainly because of their defense. And then they go out and acquire Davante Adams from the Jets, pair him up with Puka Nacua, already have a top-tier quarterback still in Matthew Stafford, who came back, and a legit defense. So they're instantly, thrown into the picture in terms of a contender. And then, we've got the Browns, who by far and away pulled off the biggest surprise, I think, of all, in that Myles Garrett, who had come out publicly and said, I am not coming back to the Browns. I want to be traded to a contender, then signs with the Browns with an extension and a no-trade clause. And I think, a couple years ago, they were good. They went 11-6, but clearly their biggest, albatross on their back that's weighing them down is the quarterback position. And until they get that matter handled, hopefully Myles Garrett would have come back with some provision that the Browns made to him that either A, they're going to go get Kirk Cousins at some point, or that some quarterback they're going to draft, potentially Cam Ward out of college. Something is going to happen at the quarterback spot to alleviate Myles Garrett's feelings that they're not in contention. So there's been some movement so far. The majority of it has been by the Chicago Bears, who I think by far have made the biggest impact and splash in this early offseason, at least on paper. Well, after what was a crazy start to what would be called, the beginning of free agency, some swirling trades were going on just prior to that. And then there was kind of a calm period this last week, right up until a couple days ago, when all of a sudden the notoriously cheap Cincinnati Bengals end up paying for waiting so long to sign 2 of their best players in receivers, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Both of them broke the bank. And Jamar Chase won the Triple Crown last season of receiving with most yards, touchdowns, and receptions. He eclipses Myles Garrett, $40 million a year deal. And then T. Higgins isn't far behind, same 4-year contract in terms of length, but signs for just under $120 million. So nearly $30 million a year there. And the next on the block there for Cincinnati is to get their all-pro defensive end, Trey Hendrickson, signed. And then you got what, many might consider 2 sleeper deals with the Seattle Seahawks, who last year went 10-7 and were atop their division for most of the season, and then made 2 massive upgrades at quarterback and a receiver, getting Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp. And, if you're Seattle on a team that was that good to begin with, and this is all before the draft. So, and then we got the Commanders kind of quietly signed Larry Tunsil, the all-pro left tackle from the Texans, and again, made a massive upgrade there. And then the San Diego Chargers, LA Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, who has a penchant for the offensive line, signs Mekhi Becton to now a 2-year, $20 million deal. And previously to that, added Najee Harris. And so I think we've got the makings, and all this happens before the draft. So it's got to be an exciting time for those teams. Let's see here. Yeah, that's what I got. So again, we're maybe a little over a month away from the draft. And so there's going to be a lot of teams that are kind of sitting tight right now, like the Chicago Bears, who made some massive free agent deals and still have cap room and still have good draft picks. So going to be interesting to see what happens here shortly.